Thanks, Neil. That was a perfect lead-in. What I'd like to share this morning. And it'll be a challenge because I'm supposed to look at the little dot in my camera, and I'm tempted to look at all your beautiful faces down here, down below. So I will do my best here with this. So I get to share this morning about this very winding path that I've been on my whole life. And over the years, I plucked bits of information and experience from here and there, and I sort of wove that together as a way to help understand myself and my world. And in particular, this morning, I wanted to share about the energy fields, the energy systems that we're all a part of, that permeate all of us. And so this morning isn't a talk about raising my children or working in marriage. This is a different kind of urging that I've had all my life. When I was very young as a child, I was kind of shy, and I did a lot of daydreaming. I'm sure a lot of you did too. But I would also wander the hills behind our house. We had some wild space, which was such a great gift. And I'd climb the hills and pick the daisies and watch the butterflies, and they had these great vines to swing on in the forest. And I would always wonder about, how does this work? Where does the butterfly live when it's not on the flower? And it created in me a sense of curiosity about my world in general. But I also had experiences in my childhood that were not quite the norm. I would go into trance-like states, and where I felt very much that I could choose to just step out and be someplace else, almost a pulling out of the body. And so I went to talk to my folks about this, and their reaction was understandable. They were kind of frightened and freaked out and said, well, that's not normal, and we're not going to talk about that. But I always knew that there was something else to know about my universe and about what was going on and how's this all connected. But it definitely went underground for about 20 years. So we fast forward into the early 70s. By then I was out of the house, I was married, and I had 2 babies by then. And that's when I really started looking at exploring the world. And so I was part of an ESP group. I did a ton of reading. I read Wayne Dyer and Course in Miracles and Mark Victor Hansen and Psycho-Cybernetics and the Dalai Lama, all of that. And then I joined Science of Mind Church, which was really the first place where I learned how to meditate deeply. And it was a completely different experience than the trance-like experiences. It felt more in control. But through all of this, as I'm beginning to read, I'm thinking, well, there's got to be something underlying that is the same through everything. And so about this same time, I had a very curious son. By now he's 10-ish or so, and he's starting to ask questions about Einstein. And so we would have these theoretical discussions about Einstein or about Newton or about Bohr. Again, expanding my sense of curiosity, wanting to know, well, how did that work? How did science work? And my dad was an astrologer, but he was also a laying on of hands healer. And so I had the privilege of watching him with intention and just with the energy that channeled out through his hands, heal many, many people. So by this time, I really wanted to know some answers. And later to find out this is all the energy field. All that we are all part of this divine plan, the Christ consciousness, the vibration, the frequency. But I digress, so let me go back. So in the 80s, I have notes here, keep me on track. I began studying massage and energy work more in earnest. And I formed my first women's group where we also experienced this shared energy. And in that time, I went through the EST training. If any of you know what the EST organization was, it was one of the first really intense mind-opening seminars. And one of the first things that they begin to talk to you about is you're responsible for what shows up in your life. And it was like, whoa. It was obvious that if you choose a particular job, you're responsible for that choice. But what about the relationships that showed up or the challenges that showed up? And so that was the first time I was really sort of confronted with the idea that I had to give up being a victim. You know, sort of put on my big girl pants and carry on. And so out of that, I noticed later on that that was in complete alignment with the four agreements. That you have choices to make in life out of an elevated sense of integrity and of claiming what is yours. And so when I started massage school, you get a really deep understanding of how all the different body systems are interrelated, how they support each other, and how if something happens in one system, in your respiratory system, it affects your circulatory, it affects everything else. And it was a good model for how the physical world and this energetic world works. It also taught me about the energy meridians and the chakras. And there began to be this interweaving of some of the questions that I had had in life of how is this all connected? It was a bigger picture, a bigger umbrella. And during this time, I would also, again, getting back to nature, go out backpacking. And for the first time, I was able to sit under the tree and get quiet enough to watch the shimmer coming off of the plants and the trees and the water. And I was like, oh, this is more of that energy. How can I access this? What can I do with this? Is this in everything? And of course it is. So at the same time, I had asked my dad to start teaching me his style of energy work, where he, with great intention, would go in and literally pull pain out of someone or negativity. And then he was able to send in love and light as a replacement for that. And because I was focusing so much on both these disciplines, massage and energy work, I began to really feel my hands warming up. They tingled to the point where they sometimes got so hot, I would have to stop what I was doing and go wash them to cool them off. But this was just another huge affirmation that there was something that connected us all systems, all people. And so by the late 80s is when I found unity of, well, not unity of Payson, but unity in general, and gave me another way to look at and a bigger description of what God was, this consciousness. About that time, I would have discussions with my son, who was moving on in school and becoming more interested. He became a physicist, so no surprise. And one of his term paper was on dark matter. And we had, again, another theoretical discussion. And I said, you just watch. Eventually, quantum physics is going to show you that the missing matter of the universe is consciousness. And so we keep getting closer to that. So at the same time, I also was trained in and got certified in Reiki. I also went through all the hypnosis training. And so I kept picking up these bits of information and these experiences and this idea and weaving this. And the conclusion, of course, is that we are all one. We are all frequency. We are all vibration. And I began seeing and feeling that much more. When I would walk past something, I would feel this pull of their energy field as they walked by. And so naturally, I was sort of repelled by anyone that was angry or upset. And I was so drawn to people that were open-hearted. I'm sure we've all had that sensation, that feeling when someone glorious walks into the room with a big smile, how you're drawn to them. So we all, at all times, are living and walking through and sitting next to and in other people's fields of energy. We can't help but affect each other in this way. So as I moved more and more into quantum physics, I read it from this metaphysical perspective, understanding this entanglement idea, that what I see and observe and feel and do over here affects what you see and what you feel and what you do over there. It can't not be that way. But also that we can affect the universe on the other side. That to me is amazing, because thought and consciousness functions outside space and time. We have a thought and it could immediately be on the other side of the universe, instantaneously. So these are all things that began to come together for me. And so as I got this deeper understanding, this connectedness, it allowed a greater compassion to roll up into me. That how could I possibly not have compassion for someone that's part of my own energy field? I might not agree with them in thought or in what they're doing, but we're all part of this energy field. We're all affecting it. Even as we talk over this computer, there is an energy connection. We had a wonderful meeting with the prayer chaplains that I led, and we went through all the prayers and held them sacred. And there was such an intense energy that came even through this technology. This does not impede it at all. And so I've had many extraordinary experiences over the years, and more recently having to do with sound healing, understanding the vibrations more, getting my singing bowls and my chimes, but also in laying on of hands in the massage practice and sending that energy and coming to the awareness that it's not just our words and our actions that affect everyone else, but our very thoughts. And that led me to find Emoto's work with the water crystals, because that was such a great physical demonstration of having unkind thoughts towards another human being hurts them, as well as hurting yourself, of holding that, the frequency of anger or hate in your own body. But it sends ripples out and affects everything around you. So it was much easier for me to stop that practice of any kind of judgment of anybody else, being in a state of compassion. I've had to work a little harder on myself at not saying unkind things to myself. And so one of the things that I've learned to do is to acknowledge my own divine nature and to fill my body up with light, to come more in alignment with that idea of healing on all levels, on physical, spiritual, mental, emotional, allowing that light to sort of roll through all the different bodies that are me. And I began saying to myself, I am the resurrection and the life of my own body and of my world. And that allowed me to become more aware, stay in a more centered place. And as I realized this, it became very true for me. The awareness became very true that I create my world out of my intentions, out of my words. Just as God said, let there be light, and it began the process of the creation of our entire universe, I get to co-create in my world, my life, out of my intention and my words. So that we are all co-creators. All of us here on this beautiful screen, all your lovely faces, we all co-create Unity of Payson. We all create our own individual lives. And one of the things I discovered about this was that in life we don't so much get what we want, but rather what we are. And just like Gandhi said, be the peace that you wish to see in the world. If you wish to have something in your life, look at clearing out anything that would stop you from vibrating at the frequency of what it is you desire. Einstein spoke about this too. He said it's a law of physics. If you are vibrating at that frequency of what you desire, it has no other choice but to come to you. That again was a huge awakening for me. And so over the years, I've asked for a lot of help from my angels along this kind of strange little path I've been on. And it usually comes rushing right in, of which I am so, so very grateful. And one of the things I picked up along the way, because I'm a Trekkie fan, is the attitude of Mr. Spock. And so when a situation comes up that's challenging, instead of immediately judging it, I try and hold the image of him and just go, interesting. And so that has allowed me to release a lot of stress in my life, have a little bit more wonder, and be able to sort of play with life a lot more. If something is interesting, instead of me having to judge it. And so my intention as I go forward here is to continue to expand my curiosity, to seek these answers and how we're all connected. And so I will continue to do all those things that support that. I will hang out with people that are like-minded, all of you wonderful souls. I will chime my bowls and I will continue to read, allowing more space, more awareness, that sense of awareness that there is love in my life, always, from all directions. There is compassion. I can be listened to, I can be heard and understood. And so thank you all for that. And it allowed a bigger sense that we all live in this field of Christ consciousness, interwoven together. And so I intend to stand more completely in my divine nature as I use these energies. I commit to living in gratitude and in love and in more awareness as I walk through my life day to day, to be conscious. And I'll accept all the help I get on the way from anyone, and I will forgive myself when I stumble, because I know I probably will. It is the path. But I will become more aware of the gifts in my life, to appreciate all the small things, the beautiful things in life. And so I ask all of you, how wonderful would it be for you to stay curious, for you to be the seeker, to ask yourself, what have I always wanted to know about in life? What did I want to have explained to me when I was a kid and it never got explained to me? To reach out to each other and support each other on this amazing walk that we get to do. And when you find your answers, bring them back and share them with all of us to raise up this community consciousness, to be a place where, yes, I am finally heard. Let's do this together. Let's be the sacred seeker as we move forward in our lives. So thank you so, so much for being there and for letting me share this morning. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty Daly, as Gaia said, a pillar, virtual pillar of the Unity of Payson community. Thank you for sharing your experience with us.